Welcome, everyone, to today's podcast, The Engineer Whisperer Transition into a Director Role. I am super excited to be here with you. And my guest today is Natalie. Natalie, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Andrea. Excited to be here. Happy to have a great conversation today.
I always have great conversations with you. So this is just bonus. We get to record it so the world sees it as well. So tell us a little bit about you.
A sure thing. I'm currently Director of Digital Strategy at the Library of Congress, physically in Washington, D.C., but accessible around the world. And I've been at the library now for 8 years, but I did start out over 30 years ago in something called human factors, and studied out at IBM in human factors and worked on point of sale systems. That's what they're called back then. And so I've had quite a journey over the last 30 years, but really in a fantastic position at the library. The library is just a fantastic resource for everybody.
And yeah, you definitely work it with passion. So I got to know you. So I wanted to invite you here today to talk about your transition into the director role. So let's start with asking you, were you invited in that role, or was that always part of your career development plan?
I was thinking, when did I really become a manager or supervisor? Because that's a big transition for a lot of people. Being in IT for so long, we tend to fill a role of expert or subject matter expert for a lot of the work that we do. And it really was the .com boom where, a lot of people were coming into the profession, a lot of people were coming in IT, and that's when they really needed more managers. And so my first big supervisory role was in the late 90s. And I, again, at IBM, and became a manager there. So I've been a manager ever since and enjoy being a manager. And my transition into director happened about 2 years ago. The federal government has a unique hiring process. So I was lucky. It has to be open and competitive, all of our jobs, so that everyone has an opportunity. But I was invited because the previous director had moved to another position. I was invited to serve on a detail or a temporary position of 6 months to fill in while they found somebody new. And then I also applied. So I had a little bit of a preview of what the role would ultimately be before I received it permanently. So I've been in the role now for almost 2 years. So I transitioned from being a supervisor and chief of a branch of IT here at the library to becoming a director. So more leading the type of work that we do.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that transition. Let's start with what came easy to you, if anything.
Since I've been managing people for quite a while, I really enjoy managing people and trying to bring out the best of them. I think I've honed my listening skills over the years. So I've done. I think the easy part for me was the managing of people, in the sense of making them feel heard, and thinking, how do we best apply their strengths, and also I think good with candor in a respectful way. So helping those that may need to develop, directing them in a way to help them so that they can meet where they want to go, and then working through some of the ways that they can actually improve themselves. But the other is innovation. I've always been a risk taker, someone who gets bored with the regular routine. So the other easy part was being able to take risks at this level where it can be quite precarious, because sometimes when you get to a certain level, when you fail or you make a wrong step, it could really feel like a really big one.
Mm-hmm.
So since I've always been a risk taker for most of my life, that was another easy part where I feel like I can propose new ideas or try new things. And there was a level of comfort because I've been doing that all my entire career. Again, it's modulated a bit, but that was something else that came easy.
I love it how you're saying that you've always been a risk taker, so you kept what worked for you, and when you
Mhm.
developed, you didn't give up that
Mhm.
part of yourself
Mhm.
just because you got into a different role. So that's a good takeaway.
It is, and I want to add, I had really good advice back in the 90s. I was happened to be in a great conversation with someone who was a global director for, it was a paint company,
Mhm.
believe it or not. And so we had a great conversation, and he gave me the advice that you have to lead from who you really are, because it's when you try to be something other than who you are, that's where it gets really, really hard. So that, and I think, that's part of our conversation here is how did I
Mhm.
transition into being a director? And there was a lot of reckoning with what are my strengths and what are my weaknesses? What can I lean into? What can I be honest about with myself that I'm not so good and I need to work on? So that self-awareness is really important because it helps you to have confidence when you are practicing these skills. So with risk
Yes.
taking, since I did it in my life, it was a part of who I authentically am. So if
Yeah.
I had clammed up and then thought, oh, I don't want to, I just want to toe the line and don't take any, just do what I'm told and not take any risks,
Yeah.
it would have been a really big challenge. And I think people would have sensed that I was being inauthentic. So,
So let's double click on that, Natalie. Well, not on the risk taking, but what you said before of getting to know who you are, your strengths, your talent. Give us, I don't know, a story, examples, tools. How did you do that? Well, I understand over the years, but what stands out? What would you recommend for others? Curious.
right. And I don't know if I've taken a variety of those evaluation tests, to personality tests
Hmm.
or
Okay.
work style tests. And I find all of them to be really valuable insights, especially when you do it in the context of your team or your manager. You get a lot of insights there. So I've taken a variety of those tests, like the Myers-Briggs, the DISC. There's another one out there that I took recently. I'm trying to remember the name of it. And it was more about what are the patterns across these tests
Hmm.
versus one test being more valid or another. And trying to really look at my career and to see, if there were patterns that reinforced that learning in my career choices, and in what environments did I feel successful, in what environments did I didn't feel successful. So it doing that sort of evaluation of what worked and what didn't work in my past, along with those tasks, was a good understanding of and build self-awareness. But also, if you can find, maybe it's not someone you work with currently, but maybe somebody that you work with in the past. If it was a mentor, that's fantastic, but a peer or colleague that you worked with in the past, or maybe somebody that reported to you in the past. And it's a hard conversation to have and it's hard to do, but if you can ask them, when I worked with you, what went well, what didn't go well, or what did you think my strengths were and what did you think my weaknesses were, it can really help build awareness. It is a little tough, but it's really important. So there's a couple of different sources, and I know a lot of techniques today recommend journaling. I think that's really, really wonderful. I tend to not do it every day. I do it in waves, but journaling, and if you're working through a problem at work, really just get out every essence of why it's an issue, or what is your honest perspective. Writing that out and not being judgmental with yourself
Hmm.
can help you surface some of these concepts so that you can build more self-awareness. But that is really important as you move up in your career, since you will be reckoned with your strengths and your weaknesses. And I'm fortunate right now. I report to a boss who's very honest about her strengths and her weaknesses. And it actually fosters a lot of trust because when she, again, to a certain degree, it's not a lot of oversharing, of course,
Yes.
but she will say, this is something that I don't do well. So I am looking to my team to fill in this gap, but she's really good at these other things. And it really fosters trust within the team to be open to a certain degree.
Thank you for bringing trust in. That's what I was thinking too, that the more we show who we are, the more people are willing and easier for them to trust us. Because bottom line, we build our trust in ourselves first before others can really trust us. So yeah, in my work, it's a paradigm too. Shouldn't I be working with others to trust me? I'm like, no, first you need to trust yourself. If you
Right.
don't project that you trust yourself, then it's kind of like nobody will.
Right. Right.
So
Definitely.
work with the person in the mirror.
Yes.
Well, let's pivot to the challenges. What was challenging in your transition?
I think the most challenging, and it's a bit of what I'm still dealing today, coming up through the field of technology, I was so used to having the role where I served as the technical expert or the subject matter expert for many years. Even when I was a supervisor, you led a team of really great talent, or really a great team that was known for getting stuff done, but it was still technical expertise. It was being a subject matter expert. And I enjoy that. I enjoy being an expert in a field, and I enjoy solving problems. And as I've moved up higher and higher, now my role as director, I have to let go of some of that. And that to me is a hard one, especially if you've been in IT for a while and you jump in, you solve problems, and you get a lot of satisfaction out of that.
Yeah.
And it's not so much that you're not solving any problems anymore. It's a different type of problem. And you need to really rely on those in your extended team to pick up more of that. And you become more of a mentor or a coach, or someone who sets a vision and reinforces that vision over and over again. And you're thinking much more long term. And it's so tempting to you might be working with somebody and you may have solved that problem in a certain way in the past, and you want to just jump in there and say, this is how you do it. But it actually builds up their competency, makes them be an expert, builds up their satisfaction in their job to be known as an expert. And then it builds up the trust that we talked about earlier. So it's stepping into more of the mentor coach role and working with your team or your staff in order to do those things. And it's really hard to let go, especially if you are a lifetime long learner and you like to tinker with things.
Yes, that comes up with tech leaders, tech people. Yes, as you said, because we like to be recognized for our knowledge. So when that part is almost like to be put kind of on the back burner, then we need to figure out another way. And that's what I'm hearing from you. So how did you do it every day? How did you, I don't know, I want to say figured it out, but you said you haven't figured it out, because I think we all still learn. So what are the, I don't know, signs?
There are two flashpoints for me. The first, and this was part of my transition into this role, the first was I wasn't able to dedicate enough time to managing up, like a lot of people, or communicating up. And when you're in a director role, or you may report to like the C-suite, or if you're in the C-suite even, there's a lot of communication and collaboration that happens, so your team may work or prepare or release something, and then they hand that off to you, and then you're promoting it, you're making sure that everyone understands what it is, the value of it,
Yeah.
how we need to expand it, et cetera. And that takes a different set of skills, and it takes time. And so my first flashpoint was that if I had, my hands into the actual technical work, I wasn't able to dedicate the time needed to really support my team. And so that was it was a flash point there for me where I
Yeah.
realized I have an opportunity here to really open up opportunities for my team, ones that we've been talking about, for a while, that we want to do this. We want to exchange this. And my new role is to advocate for that. And so I have to dedicate amount of time there. So that was the first flashpoint. And then the second flashpoint was I was trying to do both. About,
Of course, like we
you know,
always try.
yeah, and I just it was overwhelming, and I could see myself hitting burnout. So I had to really realize what is the most important for me, for my team, for my organization. And it's really to rebalance my work, and so that I dedicate more towards what is required in my new role, and less to the work that I used to do. And so it was those two realizations there, that it was a lot of work if I tried to do both. And I was missing opportunity if I didn't dedicate my time to
Yeah.
that communication and advocacy.
Yeah. I love your mindset shift around that it's actually better for the team for you
Mhm.
to quotation mark drop the technical hands-on presence and really be their advocate upwards and support their work and open up
Right.
new opportunities for them. That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, how long did you try to do both? Because I think people are always asking that question. So, like how long? Because it's how long it's too long. So how long was for you when you're like, okay, I'm very close to the burnout and rock bottom?
Yeah. And I have more work to do, so it's not over. But I, I hit, I hit my first flash point really about, 4 months in,
Okay.
with the realization that I really need to focus on these skills. And then it was about a year and a half, where it hit me that I can't sustain this level, and do everything well. And that ties back to that self-awareness, and who you are, and what you value. And I I really I decided what I value more is promoting my team, giving my team opportunities to make their career successful, to be satisfied with their job. I valued that more than me being known as the expert. And that was a good awareness for me, because it made me feel like I've taken the right step to be a director. Because if I had decided, what I really value is being the expert, then
Yes.
I probably should have picked a different role where I was
Yes.
lead architect or lead engineer or chief
Hmm.
engineer, but because I realized I like working in a team, but I also like working in a team of smart people who are really passionate about the work they do, then my values lead me towards advocating and making opportunity. So that helped to reinforce and make me feel more comfortable with letting go of some of that.
That is so powerful. What
Mm.
you're sharing is getting to that moment when you decide. When
Mhm.
when I between I don't know a few paths, and then to really make that commitment that okay, I
Right.
chose it, and then I'm gonna
Mhm.
commit to that. It's
Right.
yes, on my end to gain so much clarity and it it takes the busyness out. Like I know what I'm doing and I know which way I'm going. So that's what
Mhm.
I'm sensing about you is the power of choosing. It's so powerful.
Mhm. Yes.
Now, what about something that surprised you in your transition?
That's a good one. Surprised me. The one thing I had, I've been in my organization for 8 years, and so I know a lot of people have been in their organizations for longer. But being in an organization for 8 years, you build relationships. You know, you have successes, you have conflicts with people. It's kind of like, a large family sometimes.
Yes.
And so I remember when I was selected for the director role, I was wondering, how does this work? Because I may have been a peer with somebody who is now reporting to me, or
Hmm.
I may have had to justify something to a department where, they saw me in one role, but now I'm in a higher level, so I have more
Hmm.
power.
Yes.
And so I was, how does this work? Because I had established relationships with a lot of people. And I remember reading somewhere, I think it was Harvard Business Review, that most people, if you assume a higher role in the hierarchy, it's like a reset. And
Oh.
I was amazed by that. And I know that doesn't work with everybody. But in a way, it did, in the sense that when I moved into my director role, it was in a way an organizational endorsement that you need to give this person respect, or she has now authority that she didn't have before.
Hmm.
And so if I had maybe received a little bit of pushback from another department, I didn't get the same pushback anymore. I had more authority, and so it was easy to work with them. And that was just, I was it was amazing to know that they, and Harvard, I think Harvard Business Review, they conducted either studies or did some meta study, that can happen in a lot of organizations, that there's basically a power reset when you're moving into a higher part of the organization. And so that was surprising to me. And it's great to see that it does work, and your positive relationships do are maintained. But I think about that now when I see others now moving into higher positions, where I'm now more aware, oh, there's going to be a bit of a power reset. So I need to think about our current relationship, and then how is that relationship's going to change because of that reset, and also they're going to
Mm.
behave a bit differently. So it's just something to pay attention to when you're assuming a new role, or you're with others that are assuming a new role.
That is such an interesting topic. Let me just get a little bit curious about it, because when you say reset, first my mind went, reset as a, you delete everything and you get back to the default. Like, but as you were speaking, like, no, no, that's not what she means, because you
Right,
don't just delete the relationship that
right,
I
right,
didn't know Natalie at all, and now we start with a blank
right,
page.
right.
So how do you do that? So how do you, as you said, you think about others who are coming on and taking
Yeah.
on a higher position? What is your thought process? How do you, knowing how do you take risks, and how do you support someone as to also eh, grow into that role, and then to have a good experience? Because I know you care about people. So how have you done it, or what's your process?
Right. So supporting, it's that's I'm trying to think. There's several things there. One is, I tend to give people the benefit of the doubt. That's a bit hard to do. Try to assume that people are making decisions or trying their best, because sometimes we only know part of the story. And so the part we know may have negative effects, but sometimes there's more there. So just trying to
Mm.
assume that people have good intentions overall, unless there's evidence to support differently. And that really helps, because if you truly believe that, you go into a meeting, even if you're skeptical of some of the things, it helps you create rapport and really get to what is of essence.
And people really feel that when
Yes,
you go in with that intention, that it's almost like, I'm looking for the positive things. I'm looking
right,
for that, the good things in you.
right,
They're like,
yeah,
show me them. You
yeah,
open up that, yeah, that invisible trust.
right, right. And I think another part of it is when I was, wondering how is it transition into this director role, um, how's it going to work? Knowing about that, uh, people will reevaluate my authority and power now that I'm at a higher level in the hierarchy. It gave me a bit more confidence, and it also builds empathy with others who are going through the same, where you can watch them now. How are they going to handle that? Are they going to be more open and build more communication and collaboration, or are they nervous themselves and they
Yeah.
haven't felt that yet? So it helps build empathy with building relationships within your organization. And it also helps, I think there are some markers, and I haven't seen any studies to this, but there are some markers for like those that some, outward behaviors that you can scan for, that sense of openness, that sense of being authentic,
Mhm.
the sense of being passionate about the work you do. So, and this, I think this goes all back to self-awareness and understanding organizational behavior. It helps you relate to people in different ways and support them in different ways. But it's definitely something I think nowadays you need to track. In order to, it's, they say there's the technical skills, there's the leadership skills. There, when it comes to people skills, as you rise up through an organization or you're taking on and leading big initiatives, I think the people skills are becoming even more essential because of the way that we're collaborating and we need to communicate in order to get big things done. So
So you mean track myself of how I'm doing on those skills, or track others of how they're doing, or both?
yes, hone your own skills
Okay.
for
Hmm.
being able to understand people and how to relate to people is important because a lot of times we, like you've mentioned a couple of times, our behavior influences other people's behavior,
Yeah.
and you can amplify movement forward by building off of each other, but also if there's a misunderstanding, you can amplify in a negative way.
Yes, going backwards.
Yeah, so those types of people skills are really helpful, not just the managing of a team, but also understanding how to quickly relate to someone and understand how to build rapport and to emphasize the positive is very, very, very useful.
I call them self-leadership
Yeah.
elements of, yes, because as you said, it's that difference between reacting and responding. The
Mhm.
reactional, it's the animal response. You either fight, flight, or freeze, and then the
Mhm.
response is a few seconds of choosing what you want to respond and how
Mhm.
you want to respond,
Mhm.
or not respond at all. So those few seconds definitely matter. Um, yes. Well, thank you for sharing. I
Sure
know
thing.
that we're getting close to our time, so let me ask you, what transition are you going through right now?
Right. So I'm definitely working on more, like I mentioned, letting go more and trying to build my communication and storytelling skills. That's another big one, I think, for those that have come from technical fields to think about not only communicating, your work and the value of your work, but creating stories that resonate with a wider swath of people is very important. I think, again, when I was a supervisor, my main audiences tended to be more technical groups, more, the program, the initiative, the product, convincing everyone to, make a decision or move in a certain direction.
Yes.
Now, as you move up, I'm, talking to external partners more. I'm talking to, C-suite more, and the stories are what resonate. And so storytelling is something that I'm working on. My team is working on more, so that we can connect not only with the mind, but connect with the heart, because that tends to move people that may approach something in a different way. So
So,
working on those skills.
so tell me a little bit more. How are you? I'm curious. So give me an example of how are you developing your storytelling?
So it's funny because we've gone back to the classics. We've actually been studying. You can look at. We've been drawing a lot of diagrams of the arc of storytelling, right? The introduction. You have the protagonist and the antagonist, and there's a conflict. There's a real resolution, and then there's typically sailing into the sunset, or the final value or
Yeah.
resolution. So we've been
Mhm.
going back to the classics and studying those arcs of stories, and then looking at data, and then how do you combine the two? So how do you start to talk about data uh, and build stories that follow that same path? Because that is what resonates with the emotion, with the heart, right? So that you have a conflict, and then you resolve it, and then maybe there's an obstacle, but then you solve it, and ultimately it's better for everybody. So combining storytelling and the arcs there with the data, we think is a very powerful combination, so that we can show that there's efficiency, there's work underway, but ultimately we're trying to make people's lives better. So we've been working through some narratives there in combination with data
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
put more stories out there.
Oh, thank you for sharing. I think there's
Sure.
there's this false belief that the higher someone in a higher level position someone is, the more data I need to give them so that they make a better decision or a good decision.
Hmm.
Versus what you're saying, yes, data is important, but also the storytelling, because they're humans at the end of the day. So you can't just hit them, with the head, with the mind, with the data. Also need to hit them in the heart with why we're doing what we're doing, and why you want their support, and their budget and so forth.
Hmm.
uh, their commitment to support you and your team. So
Yeah,
yeah, that's
definitely. We see here where actually there's too much data. And
yeah. And then what
so,
do you do when you have too much data, right? I think
right.
people are like drowning in so much data.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you can stand out by, and it's really storytelling to be persuasive, and what you're trying to persuade someone with can be a lot of different things. But if your persuasion is we're demonstrating value, and this is how it's making, the organization better, or making those that we serve, customers or users or citizens, better,
Yeah.
that's very a persuasive way to tell a story. Yeah, definitely.
And memorable too. They're gonna
Mm-hmm.
remember
Mm-hmm.
it. Yes.
Definitely. Oh,
Well, thank you very much for
you're welcome.
sharing.
Thank you.
And let me give you back the mic. Close us
Okay.
out.
Wow. Thank you for inviting me. I think a lot of the things that we've talked about, it's great to be try to be authentic here, and kind of bring some of these issues up and talk through it. Closing us out. Wow. Yeah, I'll just go back to how important self-awareness and trying to be authentic as you can, and open to people being authentic themselves. This will become more and more important, especially, and I have to say AI. We haven't said AI yet in this
No,
podcast.
we
I feel like
haven't.
everywhere you say AI, but one thing that we're doing is really tracking, paying attention to one of the things that AI is doing is making us evaluate and understand what it means to be human now,
Yes.
and what humans have that will, be a part of this conversation for decades. And right now, the storytelling, going back to humanities, thinking about people and the way that we work, we can build some amazing things if we really celebrate who we are as people.
And that starts with knowing who we are. So
Mhm.
that journey of curiosity, of discovering pieces of ourselves, and then, like a good engineer, putting all the pieces together and
Yeah.
having fun while you put it together, and then just stepping back and looking at the big picture of, wow, I can do this. And I was just talking to a previous guest, like, wow, I didn't know I was capable of that until
Mhm.
that challenge showed up. So yes, we're capable of more. And but it starts with the awareness of who we are. Well, on that note, Nelly, thank you very much for
Thank
being
you.
here and
Okay.
for sharing.
Yeah, definitely. All righty. Thank you. Okay. Bye.